What if the brightest star in tennis suddenly couldn't walk? That's the question that sent shockwaves through Tokyo and through the entire tennis world when Carlos Alcaraz, England's adopted son of hope, the face of a new era, twisted his ankle in his very first match of the tournament. One moment he was gliding across the court, full of youth and confidence. The next he was crumpled on the floor, grimacing, clutching his leg, and the crowd sat frozen in disbelief. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not to him. Not now. Alcaraz was only 22, carrying the aura of invincibility, the #1 ranking in the world, the man who had already conquered New York, Paris, and London. The world expected fireworks. Instead, they saw fragility. And in that fragile instant, when medics rushed onto the court, thousands of fans in Tokyo held their breath. Millions more watching on television whispered the same haunting question. Was this the end of his tournament before it had even begun? The twisted ankle was more than just an injury. It was a crack in the myth. For months, Alcaraz had been the story of dominance, the unstoppable force redefining men's tennis. But greatness in sport is never as simple as victory after victory. It's about survival. It's about resilience when everything collapses around you. And in Tokyo, his body betrayed him at the very moment he was meant to shine. Still, this is Carlos Alcaraz. This is the fighter who never bows to fate. With his ankle heavily taped and pain etched across his face, he refused to walk away. The crowd expected a retirement. Instead, they witnessed a transformation. The young Spaniard adjusted his movement, shortened the points, played with ruthless precision. He won that match 6-4, 6-2, not just with his racket, but with his heart. Yet even as the scoreboard declared victory, the battle was only beginning. The limp back to his chair, the cold compress strapped against swelling flesh, the silent nod to his physio, all told a different story. Winning was not the same as healing. For Alcaraz, every step now carried more weight than the trophies he'd lifted all season. Every hour between matches would be consumed not with training, but with recovery. Tokyo was meant to be a celebration. Instead, it became a test. Not of talent, we already know he has that, but of endurance. Of whether a 22-year-old body, under the crushing pressure of global expectation, could withstand the grind of destiny. The organizers, aware of both the drama and the stakes, placed his next match last in the evening session. A symbolic gesture, yes, but also a practical one, to give him every possible minute to recover, to heal, to fight another day. And that is where the story sharpens. Because while the world prays for his recovery, his next opponent sharpens his sword. Zizou Bergs, ranked 45th, fearless, hungry, and with nothing to lose, waits in the shadows. For him, this is no tragedy. This is opportunity. While Alcaraz tapes his ankle and whispers to his physio, Berg studies every weakness, every hesitation, every wince. So here we stand. The champion wounded, the challenger circling, the world watching. One wrong step, and the dream could collapse. One surge of willpower, and the legend of Alcaraz could grow even larger. But before that next battle begins, we need to step behind the curtains, into the world no cameras see. Because the true fight is not on the court. It is in the silence of the treatment room, the whispers of doubt, and the lonely hours of recovery. Behind every headline about Carlos Alcaraz's triumphs lies a world the cameras rarely capture. After his dramatic first-round win in Tokyo, the arena emptied, the lights dimmed, and the noise faded. But the real war had only just begun. In a small treatment room beneath the stadium, Alcaraz lay on a table, his left ankle swollen and angry, his face tense as his physio, Juanjo Moreno, pressed and stretched the joint. Every touch was a reminder that greatness can be undone by the smallest twist. For fans, Alcaraz is a machine, a gladiator who never tires, never falters. But here, stripped of applause, he looked like what he truly is, a 22-year-old fighting against his own body. He had been here before, of course. Every athlete knows pain. But this was different. This wasn't just another knock. This was a warning shot from fate. The calendar ahead was brutal. Shanghai, Paris, Turin, the Davis Cup. To falter now in Tokyo would mean carrying doubt into every step of the season. And doubt is poison. Moreno spoke softly, urging patience, insisting on ice, compression, hours of rest. But Alcaraz's eyes betrayed him. He wasn't listening for medical advice. He was listening for certainty. Could he play again tomorrow? Could he run, pivot, explode the way his game demanded? Because Carlos Alcaraz does not merely play tennis. His entire style is built on fearlessness, sprinting to impossible balls, changing direction in the blink of an eye, leaping into forehands with reckless abandon. A compromised ankle wasn't just a handicap, it was an existential threat to his identity on the court. Meanwhile, outside those closed doors, the questions multiplied. Reporters speculated, would he withdraw? Would he risk it all for one match? Fans debated online, torn between compassion and expectation. Rival players, watching from afar, sensed opportunity. In the predatory ecosystem of professional tennis, one man's weakness is another's chance to pounce. And yet, in those long hours of treatment, something else was happening. Alcaraz was making a choice. Not the choice between playing or not playing. He had already decided he would play, because that's who he is. The real choice was how to adapt. Could he evolve his game overnight, transform from an acrobat into a tactician, from sprinter into a strategist? Could he use his mind as his strongest weapon when his body betrayed him? These were the questions that haunted him as he taped and retaped the joint, as he replayed the collapse in his mind, as he whispered to himself, "You're not done yet." And while he fought in silence, his next opponent, Zizou Bergs, prepared in a very different way. For Bergs, there was no physio, no sleepless worry about ankles. There was only opportunity. He trained with fire, telling himself that this was his shot to carve his name into the headlines, to steal a piece of history. Two men, one stage. One held the crown, but limped behind the curtain. The other held no crown, but walked tall with the hunger of an underdog. The collision was inevitable. And so, the curtain rises again. The crowd gathers, the cameras roll, and the air crackles with anticipation. But what they don't know is this. The battle has already been fought in silence, and the scars of that private war will decide the war to come. The night of the match arrived like a storm that everyone knew was coming. The Tokyo crowd filled the stands with nervous energy, their eyes fixed on the entrance tunnel. They weren't just waiting for a tennis player. They were waiting for a symbol. The number one in the world, limping yet unbroken, ready to prove that greatness doesn't retreat. And then he appeared. Carlos Alcaraz, wrapped in determination and heavy strapping around his ankle, walked onto the court. The ovation was thunderous, but beneath the cheers lay a different sound. The collective gasp of millions watching every step, every grimace, every subtle shake of his head. Across the net stood Zizou Bergs, ranked 45th with nothing to lose. He was younger than the stage, but hungrier than ever. While Alcaraz carried the weight of expectation, Bergs carried freedom. And freedom in sport can be lethal. The first rallies told the story. Bergs played fearless tennis, striking early, pushing Alcaraz into the corners, forcing him to test the taped ankle again and again. Each sprint, each slide, each push off the injured joint became a question. Will it hold, or will it crumble? And for the first time, the world wondered if this underdog could turn the king into prey. But Alcaraz is not built for surrender. Even with pain etched into his movement, he unleashed flashes of brilliance. A lunging forehand winner, a drop shot that kissed the net, a roar that shook the stadium. The crowd responded with waves of applause, sensing that this wasn't just tennis. It was theater. It was survival. It was the collision of destiny and defiance. Yet Bergs was no mere supporting character. He fought with ferocity, ripping winners, pumping his fist, daring to believe that this could be the night that changed his life. Every time Alcaraz stumbled, Bergs grew taller. Every time Alcaraz winced, Bergs smelled blood. The match became more than a contest of strokes. It was psychological warfare. For Alcaraz, every rally was a negotiation with his own body. Trust the ankle. Trust yourself. For Bergs, every point was a chance to etch his name into tennis history. The tension was unbearable, not only for the players, but for every fan glued to the spectacle. At moments it looked like Alcaraz might fall. His footwork slowed, his face twisted with frustration. But then, like a man refusing to bow to fate, he found another gear. Shortening rallies, stepping into returns, rushing the net with reckless courage. He didn't just play Bergs. He outwitted him, transforming the weakness into a weapon. Still, the duel raged. Tie-breaks loomed. Momentum swung like a pendulum. It wasn't just about who hit harder or ran faster. It was about who could endure the unbearable pressure of the moment. And in that crucible, both men revealed themselves. One as the fearless challenger, the other as the wounded champion who refused to kneel. By the time the final point was struck, Tokyo had witnessed not just a tennis match, but a story carved into memory. For Bergs, it was proof that he belonged. For Alcaraz, it was proof that greatness is not measured in perfection, but in resilience. Because to play through pain is one thing, to win through it is another. And in that moment, As the crowd roared and his chest heaved, Carlos Alcaraz showed the world that even when fragile, he remains indestructible. When the lights dimmed in Tokyo and the crowd spilled out into the night, the story of Carlos Alcaraz did not end with the scoreboard. Victory was his, but the questions lingered, heavier than any trophy. Could his body survive the weeks to come? Could he carry this momentum through Shanghai, Paris, Turin, and finally into the Davis Cup? Or would this ankle, this small, fragile joint, become the shadow that haunted his season? Because in tennis, winning one match is never enough. The tour is relentless, the pressure unending. For Alcaraz, every victory is immediately followed by another expectation, another burden. Being number one is not a title, it's a trial. And in Tokyo, that trial revealed itself in its rawest form. What the world saw was not just a player winning through pain. They saw a young man grappling with the paradox of greatness, that to inspire millions, he must first suffer in silence, that to lead a sport, he must carry the bruises of every battle, the weight of every nation's hope. And yet, this is what separates champions from legends. Legends are not remembered for the easy victories, for the days when everything worked perfectly. Legends are remembered for the nights when they looked broken, but refused to break. Zizou Bergs left Tokyo with pride, his fearless challenge etched into memory. But Alcaraz left with something greater. The knowledge that his fight is far from over. Each opponent ahead, each city on the calendar will test not just his skills, but his spirit. The road to Shanghai, Paris, and Turin is paved not only with opportunity, but with risk. And every time he steps onto a court, fans will ask themselves, will the ankle hold? Will the champion endure? Tokyo, in the end, became more than just a tournament. It became a mirror reflecting the fragility of dominance. It showed us that even the most gifted athlete is just one twist away from vulnerability. But it also reminded us why we watch, why we care, because greatness is forged not in comfort, but in struggle. For Carlos Alcaraz, the story moves forward. His 8th title of the year is within reach, his ranking safe, his aura intact. But the true battle is deeper, to prove, again and again, that resilience defines him as much as talent. And so I leave you with this question. What does it truly mean to be number one? Is it the trophies, the rankings, the applause, or is it the quiet strength to rise every time the world expects you to fall? Tell me what you think in the comments below. Does greatness come from victory or from survival? Don't forget to like this video if you felt the tension of Tokyo. Share it with fellow fans of tennis. And subscribe so you won't miss the next chapter in Alcaraz's incredible journey. Because if Tokyo has taught us anything, it's this. The story of a champion is never finished. It is written one painful step at a time.